This little thing in the week before solves absolutely everything about Michael Afton. And no, I am not exaggerating. This one little thing is the final piece that completes the story of Michael Afton and solves his ties to FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and grab some soda runny and exotic butters because this is going to be a wild ride. So this theory is going to be split into 3 main parts. So we'll have
symmetry, my friend.
The first part is going to be going over one specific piece of evidence that I found that not a lot of people are talking about. And the second part is going to be going over the rest of the evidence for this theory, and the last part is going to be a clean, smooth, shiny, complete timeline for this theory. So the main reason I made this video is because something I found the week before that I think really needs to be talked about more. Gum. And no, I am not a saint. So if you watched my old video about the week before, or at least saw it on your homepage with 500,000 other people, which is just insane by the way. But anyways, you would know that in that video, I mentioned how gum in the week before could connect to Michael Afton. But even if you saw that video, please watch this video because I talk more in depth about it, and also I talk about another instance of gum that I haven't noticed before. But also watch that video if you don't know anything about the week before. Anyways, let's go back to gum because I guess we're talking about FNAF. So if you don't know, when you see gum in FNAF, you should know that it's very important to Michael Afton because of 2 reasons specifically. Is because in the survival logbook, aka the bane of every theorist's existence, one of the things about Michael Afton's character we learn is that he has an obsession on chewing gum. To quote from the book, let's get started by listing 10 bad habits you like to break, which Michael Afton then responds with chewing gum excessively, which is very important on its own, but the good thing is it isn't on its own. So a character from the novella book series named Fred, no, that's not right. Oh, it was Pete. Yeah, it was Pete. Anyways, Pete is a narrative parallel from Mike, and they both are narratively similar. They both bullied their younger brothers, the parents were both separated, they both had a strong relationship with Foxy, and they both went to Freddy Fazbear's a lot. And finally, they both had terribly painful deaths. So why does this matter? Well, one of the key details about Pete is that he loves gum. Like, he has a full-on obsession with it. So if Pete has an obsession with gum and is very obviously a narrative parallel to Mike, it seems like Mike also probably has an obsession with gum. And with the reference in the logbook, it seems like one of the only things that we know about Mike that is true is that he loves gum. So if somewhere has a lot of gum, then it probably means Mike went to that place, right? Which leads me to the week before. So in the week before, the first time gum is mentioned is when Ralph, aka Phone Guy, is under a party table trying to hide from Chica and looks at the pieces of gum stick to the table and counts a total of 7 pieces, which isn't that shocking because it is infamous in public places to have gum stuck to the bottom of tables. And also, quick side note, some people that I know seem to think that 7 in FNAF could be connected to William Afton, but this could very easily just be a random number that the writer picked. But that, of course, isn't the only instance of gum in the week before. In the same chapter, by the way, Ralph finds a foil wrapper for a piece of gum, which is already a bit weird because there's 2 instances of gum in the book, but sure, we can rack that up to a coincidence. But guess what? A bit later in the same chapter, Ralph finds another piece of gum in the sink of the pizzeria's bathroom, which, like, come on, I feel like at this point it can't be a coincidence. Like, I know it technically can be a coincidence, but for me this feels very important. And the fact that it is all mentioned in the same chapter and in the first chapter of the book makes me think that the author and Scott wanted this to be the front center when people read this book. And also right now, while writing the script, I may have found something that could convince you that this gum is important. So when Ralph finds the gum wrapper, the book shows you what it looks like and that you can even collect it for later. But guess what? You can't ever use it. That's right. The whole reason for you to collect the gum wrapper was just to specify that it was important and to not use it in the future. Which, like, I can't believe no one else noticed this. Oh my gosh. But in all seriousness, I do think that the gum in this book implies that Mike was involved with the FNAF 1 location for a certain reason. I will get to that later. And also, before I go on to my next topic, I haven't really made any theories that were like really groundbreaking or cool. And since this theory I think is really good, I'm just gonna name it something like Mike Gum. Yeah, let's stick to Mike Gum. Because why not another crappy theory name, which is also more confusing than it is revealing. So the theory is that in the week before all the gum appearances and the wrapper points to Michael Afton being involved with the location. Okay, so now since I'm done with that piece of evidence, let me talk to some other pieces of evidence to explain what Mike was doing in the FNAF 1 location. And for ease of consumption, let me explain each piece of evidence in order of the game's release. So in FNAF 1, it really seems like we play as Michael Afton. Even though, yes, we did see the name Mike Schmidt in the paycheck of FNAF 1, I think that we really all collectively agree that Mike Schmidt is just another alias for Michael Afton. From the Ultimate Guide, from another Michael and sister location that also works at a Freddy place, to the logbook mostly being about Michael, but also having a lot of FNAF 1 imagery, it's really safe to say that At this point, everyone agrees that Mike Schmidt, at least in the games, is just an alias for Michael Afton. So that means that after Ralph died, Michael replaced him as a night guard, which is just really interesting since the week before implies that Michael Afton was in the pizzeria before he replaced Ralph. So that means that there must be a reason that Michael really wants to work at Freddy's. Moving on to FNAF 2, in FNAF 2 there are 2 night guards, Jeremy Fitzgerald, which basically has been confirmed not to be Michael Afton, but instead some random guard that basically gets lobotomized by a certain animatronic. But the other night guard is Fritz Smith. Now, this could very much be Michael Afton. One of the main reasons being how the check in the end of the game to fire Fritz Smith has the same reasons as in FNAF 1. I know there's a lot of other pieces of evidence on it, but I don't really want to explain everything, so just go watch my friend Zetarock's very in-depth video about it. But please watch it after this video so that YouTube's analytics don't kill me. Anyways, moving on to FNAF 3. So in FNAF 3, you find some more evidence of Fritz Smith being Michael Afton, because most everyone, well, except some people, agree that the guard at the Fazbear Frights location, or known to most as the Fright Guard, is Michael Afton, which is backed up even more by the survival logbook and the many images of FNAF 3 that appear and all seem to be about Michael Afton. But how does that connect to Fritz Smith? Well, in FNAF 3, you get a lot of jump scares from the animatronics that are original to the FNAF 2 location, which seems to me that the Fright Guard saw the FNAF 2 animatronic, which I understand Michael Afton could have just been around the pizzeria and saw the animatronics, but it doesn't really make that much sense in my opinion, because at that point it would have just been a really big stretch, and making him Fritz Smith would have just been more clean and easy. And finally, something that is basically the one connecting all of these threads between the instances of Michael working at the different locations, the Immortal and the Restless. So if you don't know what the Immortal and the Restless is, let me explain it to you. The Immortal and the Restless is a cutscene that plays at the end of every night at Sister Location. The entire plot is fairly simple. There's a vampire named Vlad who is married to a woman named Clara. Clara keeps asking Vlad to acknowledge a baby as his own child, but he keeps denying it, making up terrible excuses and repeating the same line.
The baby isn't mine!
Eventually in the end, Clara finds out that Vlad bought a kid's meal, which basically is his way of acknowledging that the baby is his. But the thing is that ending happens in the non-canon ending, so it really seems like that isn't canon to the games. So long story short, what does this show mean? Well, for many years, people thought the show was about William Afton and Mrs. Afton, and that William and Mrs. Afton both had a child that wasn't his, and that's that, right? It was just about William Afton and Mrs. Afton. Well, not quite. You see, many years after the Sister Location, the survival logbook came back to strike again. So one part of the book asks Michael Afton which fictional character he relates to the most. He writes his answer. So now it very much seems like the true meaning of the Immortal of the Restless was actually about Michael Afton being Clara, trying to tell Vlad, aka Fast Entertainment, about the murders at the pizzeria, aka the baby. So how does this have anything to do with Michael working at the different locations? Well, I think that the Immortal of the Restless is showing us that Michael was some way or another trying to find out about the murders happening at Freddy's, and he was trying to investigate the murders by going to different locations. But even when he went to different locations and gave different pieces of evidence against Faster Entertainment, every time Faster Entertainment would find a reason that it wasn't true and would never acknowledge his murders. So this is really cool and all, but how does this all connect to the rest of the timeline, and how does this make sense in a practical timeline? Well, let me give you this as the full timeline of Michael's investigation at Freddy's. So 4 years after Michael Afton helped commit the bite of 83 to his brother, he decided to try to do something right. He found out that his dad, or maybe Henry, I still don't really know, opened another location, this time with shiny new animatronics, the FNAF 2 location. And almost as soon as it was opened, by word of mouth, Michael heard about some murders at the pizzeria and even about someone getting lobotomized. He wanted to find out more on his own and decided to work at the location himself. Around now being a young adult, he could work at the pizzeria, so he did. He changed his name so no one would know about his connections to the company, and he worked on the job. After he finished his shift, he tried to find out what happened with the animatronics, so he even went as far as to tamper with their facial scanners to see what happened, but it didn't work, so he got fired on his first day. And also because he really never took care of his general hygiene. But anyways, he was trying to show the evidence of the murders to the higher ups currently running Faster Entertainment, but they just brushed it off, just like how Vlad brushed off his child being his. After that, many more years passed, and Michael Afton then heard about another location with a much smaller budget opening at a different location that he had to investigate. And because of the terrible bad press, there was barely anybody able to watch him in the daytime, which was great. So he snooped around everywhere trying to find anything that can give him a lead on the terrible things that happened, and eventually he found it. He noticed a terrible stench coming from the animatronics, not the stench of old plastic and cloth, but instead of an old decaying flesh. He wanted to investigate more, but knew that he would get caught if he was tampering with the animatronics on camera. So he waited and waited, looking for clues everywhere he can go and leaving gum around, because why not? It's not like anybody was going to catch him. Finally gets the position. So he works in the pizzeria, and we mostly know the rest. Each night the animatronics become possessed and try to attack Michael. At this point, he was starting to get used to it. Nevertheless, he wanted to know more about the animatronics, so after each shift, he would go up to the animatronics and investigate them. And finally, he found out what he was looking for. He saw each of the animatronics and the endos covered with dried up blood, which was enough evidence for him. So that day, he contacted Faster Entertainment and showed one of the representatives the blood on the endos. He told Michael that they would investigate it, but when he eventually did hear back, it was the same pathetic excuse, just like the show Michael loved to watch. A couple days later, and boom, he got fired again, and Fast Entertainment was still too lazy to change their excuse for firing him. A couple days later, and his dad, William Afton, decided to contact Michael Afton. Michael didn't want to answer him because he knew how horrible he treated him and his family, but out of obligation, he answered. William then very quickly told Michael that if anything happened to William, he would go down an elevator in his old office and put her back together, whatever that meant. And then as abruptly as the call started, the call ended, without William saying goodbye to his last remaining child. After a while, Michael started to have a desire to tell his father about the murders at the pizzeria, and that he knew about it. Sure, his dad was awful and just a terrible person overall, but if anyone knew anything about Fast Entertainment, it would be his dad. Heck, his dad founded it, so it was a surefire plan. But one thing was going wrong. His dad. He tried to contact his dad over and over, but he never was able to get a hold of him. So he did what his dad had told him to do only a bit before, go down his elevator. When he arrived at Circus Babies and Rentals, he decided to start working there. Then he found out about the murder of his late sister, Elizabeth, and how the way to put her back together, like her dad said, was to let her escape. So he did try to let her escape, but there was one thing he didn't know. Elizabeth had changed, and we all know what happens next. But during the scooper, he gets injected with the remnant of the MCI and his brother, and he finally knows the truth about the murders, the truth about everything. His father. He did the murders. He closed down the pizzeria. He killed the only siblings Michael had ever known, and that was it for Michael. He finally knew the truth about everything, and he had only one goal in sight: to find his father and make him get the punishment that he so very deserves. And also, these are some final thoughts before I begin the outro. I know the part about the Mike Gum theory didn't really add much in the long run, but I do think it was very interesting nonetheless. And also, like I said before, I don't know if I made the theory of Michael going from pizzeria to pizzeria trying to find out about the murders, but I still wanted to put my own personal twist on it. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed yourself while watching this. And also, please subscribe and leave a comment if you like this video. And also, if you want to see another video about the week before, please click the link above. See you later and continue to enjoy your soda roni. Love Minecraft.